Thank you for joining us for this episode of Historic Recipe for Social Change. We are creatively celebrating our right to vote over the time-honored tradition of cooking. This three-part series will celebrate the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the centennial of the passage of the 19th Amendment. 3 generations of African American women will be cooking traditional comfort foods and discussing how to vote safely, the issues that are important to them, and how they believe their voice and actions will create social change. So let's get started with today's menu: barbecue beef ribs and vegetarian ribs, southern greens, and 10 cheese baked mac and cheese. Okay, so welcome to a recipe for social change. We are so excited about these recipes, and today is one of my favorites to make because I'm primarily a vegetarian, but I have a lot of family members and friends that eat meat, and so I always call Aunt Vi to ask her about how to make this recipe for beef ribs. So Aunt Vi, share with them how you make your beef ribs.
I make the best beef ribs in my opinion. You marinate your meat tenderizer. After you rinse your beef ribs off with warm water, not hot, cold, warm water to make sure all the residue is off. Then you put it individually, you put your meat tenderizer on in your container. Now the fun part, I use usually the hickory smoke brown sugar sauce. But being like I am, teaching JéWana to go the extra mile, put your own fingernail or fingerprints in it, whatever you want to call it, I have a little bit of extra on the side. Now, we have the meat tenderizer. I put my garlic, salt, my garlic in it. You know, hey, the recipe.
That's right, yeah. Put it in.
You put your garlic salt. Then you put your cayenne pepper according to the way you like hotness. I'm not a JéWana, so.
Yeah, I like it hot.
yeah. But you know, we're gonna fill this thing up. So I'm putting a little bit of hotness in here. Now I pour my container that I had my barbecue sauce in. I always put the rest fill it up with water to make sure I get all the leftover residue of the sauce in my container. I don't waste anything. Make sure we get everything in here because we want to cover this beef ribs up completely. We don't want to leave too much uncovered. Now we whisk this up until it turns real smooth. You don't feel any lumps whatsoever in this. If it doesn't feel like it's marginalized into a complete oneness, you need to keep stirring a little bit. And I have more barbecue sauce in this container, a little bit deep, so I am putting some more, filling this thing up to the top. Because listen, you can make too much and have left over. Better to have it that way than to have not enough and you wish you had more. So when you see this container clear, you got all that sauce out of this container.
Oh, it's good.
Now, okay, a little bit more garlic. I love garlic.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
you can never go wrong with garlic. A little bit more cayenne. Now, here's this key secret, the southern old-timey way my mother taught us. You always put some apple cider vinegar, about 1/4 cup, in your barbecue sauce. No matter what kind of barbecue you do, you gotta put some apple cider vinegar. Now we have a little bit more brown sugar.
It's very
Because
fragrant.
it's an accent. That brown sugar gives you that little southern barbecue accent. And nobody makes barbecue like the South. And we always have to have our vinegar in there. Okay, yeah, you gotta have it in the South. Especially in North Carolina. In the eastern part of North Carolina where we were born, you use vinegar along with the barbecue sauce. Now you're gonna pour all this over until you fill the top. Now you see this right here needs to be whisked up a little bit more. because you want all of this in here. Oh, you're going to say, oh, you're just going to have a soup. No, we're not going to have a soup because our thing is, the goal is to cook this booger down until you see only the pure sauce. Now we're going to put it at the temperature of 450.
Great. Okay, so you said we. So that seems like we kimosabi is me because this Dutch oven is really heavy. So we're going to put it in and then we're going to come back and we're going to do a vegetarian version.
Bless your heart.
Okay, so we're back with the vegetarian version of ribs. Now, again, this is one of the meat substitutes that we use, and we really encourage people to use these as a substitute. It is something when you want the texture of meat. But what's important about cooking vegetarian food that many people don't realize is you need to season it just like you season meat, or it's going to taste like rubber. And with that said, we have this meat substitute that's called vegetarian steak. It's made by Worthington. And again, this is one of the things we need to tell you who to look for when you're looking for this type of meat and or substitute. So what we're going to do is I'm going to first go ahead and layer it in the pan a little bit, and I'm going to use Cajun seasoning on the top of it. Again, because we need to get flavor in this, because it really doesn't have that much of a flavor. So anything that you add to it, it's going to really take it in and soak it in very good. And so, that's right. And so, and it has enough sodium in it, so hopefully you use things that really are salt-free but are full of flavor. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to add in the same type of sauce that Aunt Vi made for the beef ribs, and I'm going to start layering that. And as we do that, Aunt Vi, tell us a little bit about the history of voting in our family, like stories of grandfather and things of that sort that you can share with me.
Well, my father he said the 8th grade education, but we kind of think it was 6th, but he was very studious for him not being able to go to school like he wanted to, living in the country, and being a sharecropper child. They could only go to school in the winter after harvest time, and some of those children didn't even have shoes to wear, which is so sad. My father found some old high heel shoes from some woman. No, my grandmother did day work, and she brought some shoes from the lady she worked for, and my daddy wanted to go to school so bad with no shoes, he wore her shoes to get an education. During Rosa Parks' time, when they had it so difficult for the blacks to vote, he made sure he learned the Gettysburg Address and Constitution, everything. He would walk around the house reciting those things to counteract any obstacle that they would put before him to keep him from voting. And that instilled in all of our hearts and minds as his children to never lose the opportunity to vote. Take advantage of every opportunity, from voting for the city manager, the mayor, the congressman, whoever, the police chief, if we could vote for him. But and my sister graduated. When she graduated, Martin Luther King spoke at her commencement, and I never will forget what he said. He said, if you can't find anything worth fighting for, you're not fit to live. And voting is worth fighting for. Let's be fit to live.
Oh, that was great, Aunt Vi. Look, you told that story just in prime time. We're about to finish this thing off. I'm going to put the rest of our sauce on the top. And unlike the beef ribs, because this meat is already preheated, pre-made, per se, all you have to do is put this in the oven for maybe about 20 minutes, and we're good to go. Again, it's all about the flavor. Make your sauces the same way that you would for any meat dishes that you would have, and your vegetarian friends and family members will be amazed that the master that you are as we again work together to make recipes for social
Or
change.
did he say, if you can't find anything worth living for, you're not fit to live?
Oh, well, she remembered the last part of that.
In case you want to look it up. And
She just messed my tagline up, didn't she? That's right up, man.
get it right.
Okay, so I'm in charge of sides, and the sides that I'm about to do right now are greens. Now, you can do greens all kinds of ways, and of course, they're in season right now, but I am doing the semi-homemade way. So I have my pre-packaged greens, and I'm gonna tell you a little secret about these greens. What I did, instead of taking them straight off and doing them, I put them in the freezer so they can get a little crisp on them. That's gonna allow me to get more into my Instapot. So what we're gonna do first is add in 1 container of broth, of vegetable broth, because you normally cover it with water, but this gives it a little more flavor, and it's all about the flavor when you're doing greens. So the next thing that I'm going to add in is a cup of Bragg's seasoning. And so that's very important. It's liquid aminos. So again, it gives you some more nutrients. Then we're going to do a 1/2 cup of apple cider vinegar. Putting that in. And so one of my friends always asks, how do you make greens? And then when I started telling her everything I put in it, she said, that's too much. That's too much. The next thing I have is about 1/4 cup of, this is liquid smoke, hickory liquid smoke. Now, again, a lot of times when people make greens, traditionally, they either use turkey necks or hammocks, but this right here gives it that great flavor that you're used to without using the animal proteins. And then we have a little bit of brown sugar. And I must tell you too, I'm just telling you a little bit of this, a little bit of that, because traditionally most cooks really don't measure things out. We just do it so that people can have an idea as to what to do. Then we have a little of barbecue sauce, hickory smoked barbecue sauce, again to give it a little bit more flavor. Now here are my pinches of this and my pinches of that. So I get some black pepper and I crank some in there. Then I have a little bit of paprika that I put in. And then garlic powder, we put that in. And then of course everybody knows that good greens have to have sage. So now we have some sage that we put in. And that's going to give it that great rich flavor. And then again, just in case your greens aren't tender, we're going to put a little bit of meat tenderizer in there. Just a dash. And then for that flavor of ham, that we're not using any animal protein, but there's something that Goya makes, and I have to use the name there so you know what to look for, that's called hamon. And so I put 1 package of that in there. And then we're going to give that a great mix. Mix it up really good so that, again, when we get our greens down in there and it's pressurized, that you have an even taste going throughout your greens. And so what I'm going to do again now, we're going to put those greens in there straight out of the bag. Now again, you could pre-wash the greens again because sometimes we want to be a little bit more careful. But if you do that, I would still encourage you to go ahead and freeze them because that's going to allow you to get more inside of your pot. And you're going to see that even though I'm putting 2 bags of greens in here, and it's going to look like it's pretty full, it's going to cook down very much. And you'll have a good serving. But if you're going to feed a big amount of people, you probably want to do 2 pots or 4 bags of greens because this is going to be a hit at your next family meal. Okay, so we still have 1 more bag to get in there because again, greens are full of nutrients, full of life. And we're just reminding you again as we're doing our cooking series, our cooking series on social change and recipes for social change, that we really have to think about voting and what's so important about us being engaged around this time. Because right now we're in October and voting is right upon us. And we want to make sure that we are taken care of. And these are some of the comfort foods that one will help keep your stress down, but at the same time will be very nutritious. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to push those down because again, we want to make sure that we get a good seal on our Instapot. And then I have 1 more container of your vegetable broth. Now again, if you want a meat flavor, you can also use chicken broth or beef broth, but this will do just the same. And so look, we're covering our greens really well. They are saturated with broth on the bottom that has been seasoned, and on the top from what we just put in. And then, you know, I really probably could squeeze one more bag of greens in here that are frozen. Now remember, if you would have done it regular, the leaves would have been overpowering the pot at this point. But we are good right now, so we're about to go ahead and get our Instapot sealed. And it was amazing to me that there wasn't a recipe or a time on the Instapot for greens. But what I figured out is if you put it on 35 to 45 minutes on the high pressure, it'll work. But you can also use the long term or the slow cooking. Either way will work fine, just depending on how tender or al dente you want your greens. Okay, so now we have everything in our Instapot. Let's seal it up. And you know that can be very tricky, can't you? But you hear the sound of and you know that you're ready. And so we're going to go ahead and set that to 35 to 45 minutes on high pressure. Or if you want to, you can still do it slow cook. Either way, it's going to be great. And here's one more thing for you. My Aunt Vi always likes to say, and the rest of the story. So the rest of the story about, you see this juice that we just look at, this green juice? A lot of times people call it pot liquor. And so, you know, a long time ago they had the pandemic that was almost like the one now when the bubonic plague, was it, that went across? I can't remember what name of it was. But you all, the 100-year plague from the last time. Actually, the pot liquor, they say, African Americans stayed well because they were actually eating their greens and drinking the pot liquor because there are so many nutrients that are in here. So again, we remind you, eat seasonally. That's where the greens are. But then also there are nutrients that are in here. So not only are we being comforted, we're being restored. Okay, so let's check on these greens out of this Instapot. Oh, they look like they're done. Now remember, we had 2 large bags. But now they have cooked all the way down. But look at that aroma. This is one of those times that I wish you had smell-o-vision. It is amazing. And so again, this is one of those traditions of recipes that have been passed down. I must say that like many of my recipes, my Aunt Vi, who has been in these segments, really gave me the go-ahead with the starting of, I'll call her and say, Aunt Vi, how do you fix this? She'll tell me, and then I'll put my own spin on it. And so that is what's being done here. Originally, she used to cook them in the pot or in her pressure cooker. And then now I've learned to do them in the Instapot. And I know a lot of you all are interested in doing this as well because I've had friends ask me about it. The Instapot is really quick. You can do it as a slow cook like you normally do traditionally, but you can also do it in like 35 to 45 minutes. I had to figure it out for myself because, you know, Instacart comes with a little card and it tells you how to make different things. But amazingly, greens weren't on there. Cabbage, beans, meat, pot roast, everything except for greens. And so now you know how to do greens in the Instapot. Okay, you all, we're here for recipes of social change, and we're going to do my side of macaroni and cheese. And so again, my sides, the food that I do is always something traditional that comes from something that I've grown up with that I love. Actually, my recipe on this one is based on my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, Ruth Grier, her recipe for macaroni and cheese. Now again, I have added some of my stuff in there because just to make it JéWana-rise or my own, that's what we're going to do today. And so again, you know that I work for the Asheville Buncombe Institute of Parity Achievement, and we're all about health. But right now we're talking about comfort food. And this right here is nothing that you want to talk about when you're talking about staying healthy, unless you do, again, you're doing everything in moderation, or I would like to say that you just do this at the holidays because this is a 10-cheese mac and cheese, you guys. Yes, it's a wonderful thing. But we have with me my mother, and I want her to talk about a little about her experience and why she really feels enthused and engaged when it comes around voters' rights and making sure that her voice is heard. So I'm going to start building, and then we'll start talking. So what we're going to do first is I start with, what is this? This is wonderful cheese sauce. So it's canned cheese soup. So we're going to put that in my trusty mixing container here. And there's a reason that I do it here instead of a regular bowl. It's because this is going to be my roux, and I'm going to layer with it. And it's much easier to use it, thank you, Mom, to use it in a way that we just mix it all together, then I can pour straight from it. Okay, and now I'm going to add in 5 eggs. So we have 3 cans of that cheese soup. You can either get the name that I will not mention or the brand that you have at your local grocery store that you can use. And then some people also use evaporated milk, and that's what I'm going to do. But before I do that, I want to get that mixed in really good. I want to make sure that my sauce has a great consistency when it comes to the cheese and the eggs mixing in. And believe it or not, it really makes a difference in the way that your macaroni and cheese comes out, the order in which you do these things. Okay, so next I'm going to go ahead and add in my evaporated milk. I have 1.5 cans of milk. And then people can look at this and say, is all of that going to fit in there? And look, it did. Okay, so we're going to mix that on in, get that stirred in really good. And then, Mama, tell me why you are so energized when it comes to voting and making sure that your voice is heard.
Well, I grew up during the time of the 50s and 60s during the civil rights movement, and I saw so many of our people being persecuted, hosed down because they wanted to vote. And I also grew up the time when there was a black and no white sections.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that was not right. And when I saw that they were protesting against the inequality, I felt like that then voting was very important because at one time we couldn't even vote.
Yeah, but you know what? You just said black. And as you say black, I'm going to add in my black pepper. And so I'm going to crack some black pepper in here. And then I'm going to do some garlic powder. I'll just put some in there. Now, you all know that I don't measure. But if you have to say you want to measure, we'll say a teaspoon of your pepper. And then maybe a tablespoon of your garlic. And then your paprika. Now, this does something very amazing. I went too fast. But if you look at it, you can see the reaction that it has the majority of the time. If I would have done it a little slower for you, you'll see that the paprika spreads when it hits the garlic. But that's great. So keep on talking, Mom.
And so when I saw how people were so eager to vote, but the vote was being suppressed, I said to myself as a teenager, when I get old enough to vote, I'm going to register and vote. And I started voting when I was 18 years old, and I have never missed voting since I started voting. Because I feel like voting is one of the ways that we can let our voices be heard. And I also believe that every vote counts. Some people say it doesn't matter, but I'm one of these true believers that believe that you need to make your voice count.
That's right, Mama. And as you talk about making your voice count, we're going to start layering this macaroni and cheese. Did you all believe that it was going to happen this fast? It doesn't take that long to get my roux going. And so now I have my mac and cheese. I'm starting with the sauce on the bottom. I have my noodles already done because everybody knows how to do noodles. You know to cook them a little under because you're going to bake a little more. And a little secret I like to tell you about my macaroni and cheese noodles is that when I boil them, you know, you add salt, and they normally tell you to salt very heavily. But what I do instead of using regular salt is I use garlic salt because, again, that's a secret ingredient to everything, I believe. But also, you get all of your flavor into your noodles when you boil them initially. Okay, and so now my other cheese that I use Munster cheese, so I've diced that up, and we're going to put some of that down for our first layer. And then after that, I have a combination of 8 cheeses really right here. So, you know, you can get those cheeses that have 4 different kinds of cheddar. So I have 4 different kinds of cheddar, and then the Mexican blends, 4 Mexican cheeses. And so that's what we're layering with. Okay, so all we're going to do is continue to layer. And so, Mama, as we continue to layer, you continue to talk. So why are you really engaged now around voting and making sure that your voice is heard?
No, let me tell you first. I remember my sister and I, during the sit-in time, we were not permitted by my parents
Making a mess, guys.
to go and participate in the sit-in. But we used to go and visit my grandparents in the summertime. And so we decided that we were going to stage our own sit-in.
Really?
We went to this restaurant, drugstore, and they served ice cream. So we went in and ordered some ice cream, and we decided that we were going to sit and eat our ice cream. The man came in and said, "You all cannot sit there." And so we decided we were going to sit there. We thought they were going to call the police because that's what our friends said. Oh, they're going to call the police and y'all going to go to jail. I figured, they don't have a one-room jail, so we wouldn't be in jail too long. So we sat there. And amazingly, when we came back the next time, they had taken all of the booths out of the drugstore so that none of us could sit in there again.
They were serious.
Yeah, they were serious. But we were serious in making sure we took our stand because we felt like it was not right. And now I still feel the same way that a lot of things are going on in the world, in the United States, especially when it comes to justice, equal justice. And one of the ways we can make a change is participating in programs, especially voting. Make sure we get somebody in office that will work toward making sure we have equal justice here in America.
That's right. And one of the other things I like about you is that, a lot of times people find one station that they look at when they're talking about politics, MSNBC, CNN, or Fox. What I respect about you is that you look at both of them. And why is that? You look at them all.
Because I feel like you need to know what your enemy is doing. So if you know what your enemies are doing, what they're talking about, at least you know how to counteract what they're doing.
That's
what
right.
They're saying.
So again, you all see this thing is building out right here, right? And I have plenty of macaroni because a lot of times we'll actually do 2 of these. So we have one for now and one for later. There's enough here to do that because of the size of my container. And so we're about to finish this on off here. We're going to put the last bit of our monster cheese in. I like to put it down in between, just again because that texture, it's all about texture when you're having mac and cheese. And this is baked mac and cheese. It's not that regular creamy stuff or the stuff right out of the box. This is something that you know that somebody has made it for you. They really care. And so we care about you. We want you to be comforted. We want you to enjoy the time with your families during the holiday season. And then also when you're celebrating or feeling a little bad because of whatever the outcome of the upcoming election is, we know that one thing remains the same, that we all want to live in a country that is free of hate, full of love, just like this mac and cheese is full of love, you guys. And so we're going to put one more layer of the sauce over the noodles. And then we're going to finish it off with our shredded cheese. Now, you see I still have a little bit left there, right? And we're going to use it because that's what gives us the nice crust on the top. After we put this on, we're going to fill it in. And one other thing that I would like to tell you about when you're making mac and cheese and you're covering the top of it, it's best if you try to cover all the noodles. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you get those crunchy bits that you really don't want? They almost feel like they're going to break your teeth off. That's because those noodles have been exposed. And so if you use all of your cheese and you try to cover it up as best as possible, you won't have that problem. And so I'm going to get the rest of that cheese out of there. Oh, I have a couple of nuggets left in there. We don't want to leave any cheese behind. Leave no cheese or no man behind, right? And so we're going to move all of that over. I think that we're covered pretty good. I have one noodle that's exposed. We got to get that buddy under cover. And then I think we're all pretty much covered up now. And then for the final step, we're going to cover this up, that gooey goodness. And I think I might want to even move it around. I don't know if my camera is getting all of this. I know they're getting the messes down here, but we want to make sure that we're getting the real deal Holyfield on what this looks like. We're going to move it over just a little bit more. I know my camera guy can keep up with me because he is a producer extraordinaire. So we're covering this up We're trying to make sure that all of our cheese, again, is getting saturated with the cheese sauce on the top, because that's going to give us a nice little crust. Again, this is a combination of recipes that I really love for people that make macaroni and cheese that I like. One, again, is my grandmother, Ruth Grier. But then I also have to give a shout out to my friend, Spencer Mitchner, because she's the one that really inspired me about that texture. I learned from her that it's good to cube some up inside of there, because it gives you a better texture when you're finishing everything up. Okay, so we're about to finish up with the last little bit here. And again, somebody asked me, were we going to use all of that? Was all that going to fit into that container? It fit in there, didn't it? Now, my counter isn't very clean, but that's all right. The stomach is going to be happy, and it's going to be comforted when we get this all done. Okay, this 10 cheese macaroni and cheese is going to change some people's lives. We're all done. You see, we got a little bit for everybody. We got the dark parts around the side and that golden gooiness in the middle. This is wonderful. It is truly a recipe for social change. If nothing else, it's going to change the trajectory of your evening. Thank you for joining us for Recipes for Social Change. We have a full meal right here for you, and we hope that you all are so full that you are energized to get out and vote. What would you like to say as we tell everybody good evening?
I told you so.
Yeah,
and this veggie ribs, second place.
And Mama?
Well, everything looks good to me. And like JéWana said, look at this food and think about how good it is, but think about how much better you will feel when you get out and vote.
Vote.
Thank you to AARP of North Carolina Western Region, APIPA, Pro 16 Productions, and you for joining us for this episode of Historic Recipe for Social Change. Don't forget to vote safely, and for more information, go to your county's Board of Elections webpage or www.aarp.org/NC Votes.